For a number of years, domestic energy prices rising well above the rate of inflation and earnings. For a while, there have been questions over whether the privatised electricity and gas markets have been competitive enough to give customers a fair deal. Now there's going to be a full-blown competition inquiry. Joe has the details.
I do. In the last 6 years, electricity bills have risen by 39% and gas bills by almost 2/3 over the same period. Critics argue that with only 6 companies supplying 95% of our needs, the market has failed. And that the size of those companies, their foreign ownership, and the fact that they both produce energy and supply it makes it impossible to work out whether they're giving us a fair deal or profiteering. It's an issue Ed Miliband has seized on. Last October, the Labour leader said that he would freeze prices for 20 months, replace the regulator Ofgem and break up the gas and electricity companies to make them more transparent. Yesterday, Scottish and Southern announced that they would be freezing prices and splitting the company up into separate retail and generating arms, with suggestions that they were preempting Labour's policy. However, David Cameron has said the SSE decision was down to his cut in the eco-levy. This morning, Ofgem said that there was possible tacit coordination over price hikes and referred the companies to the Competition and Markets Authority, which has the power to break them up. But don't hold your breath for lower bills. The inquiry alone is expected to take 18 months. Well, within the last hour, the Energy Secretary, Ed Davey, explained why there would be an investigation despite the risks.
A market investigation reference is a course of action that should not be lightly undertaken, particularly at a time when the energy market is going through radical changes to introduce new low-carbon generation while ensuring security of supply. But tackling these issues through the independent competition authorities provides companies and investors with the confidence that this process will be evidence-based, fair and just, and free from political interference.
Well, that's Ed Davey there. We can speak now to Richard Lloyd from the consumer organisation Which. Richard Lloyd, welcome back to the programme. You must welcome this.
This is the right thing to do, Joe. There's been such a cloud of suspicion hanging over the industry, and what we've now got is an independent investigation that can get to the bottom of what's going on. But this is a huge moment for the suppliers, in particular the biggest suppliers. We want to see them get on with putting customers at the heart of their business, getting their costs under control, trading more transparently, whatever happens with this investigation, doing that rather than threatening to turn the lights out if it doesn't go their way. So it's a pivotal moment. It's make or break for the big energy suppliers, and it will be, I hope, good for consumers in the longer run. But as you rightly said, don't hold your breath, it won't happen overnight.
Well, no, that's the problem. It's going to take, well, nothing's going to change, certainly for 2 years. And one of the questions, I suppose, is when you look at other markets, you look at the supermarkets, for instance, the big 5 there doesn't seem to be a problem with them being more competitive on pricing. Why hasn't it worked, then, for the big 6 energy companies? Have you failed, to some extent, as a consumer organisation?
Well, one of the interesting things about the report that Ofgem published today was they say very clearly there is clear evidence of a lack of competition, that competition hasn't worked in the market. And we've known that, and they've known that for years. They've been trying to tackle it through changing the rule book, through making the market a bit simpler, through getting more liquidity into the wholesale market. But everyone agrees now, I think, that that hasn't gone far enough. And there's still a huge number of consumers sitting on the same expensive tariffs, paying, as Ofgem have said today, way over the odds, potentially a couple of £100 and more a year. So the suppliers know that most people don't switch around. They know that it's too confusing and complicated. There's this suspicion about the vertically integrated companies that sell themselves, the big companies that sell themselves power and then sell it on to consumers. And it's right to have a look at all those things, but at the same time, Ofgem needs to show that it's up for tackling those problems in the market at the same time. So we've in effect got a parallel process going on at the moment, which has to have the consumer welfare at its heart.
Richard Lloyd from Which, thank you.
Thanks.
Listen to that, the Energy Minister Michael Fallon and the Shadow Energy Minister Tom Greatrex. Welcome to you both. Michael Fallon, why did it take you so long to work out that there was something wrong with the energy market?
Well, we've been reforming the energy market ever since we came into office. We're now simplifying the tariffs. There used to be 400 different tariffs. We've simplified the tariffs. From next week there'll be more clearer information on your bill. We're making it easier for the independent suppliers to compete against the big six. We've been reforming the market as we've gone along.
But obviously not by enough, or you wouldn't be getting Ofgem to refer it.
Well, I'm delighted they have referred it. This is great news for consumers. The first time, by the way, that the competition authorities have ever looked at the energy market, and I think it'll be welcome to consumers and to the companies themselves, because they will then have more certainty.
But the great reforms you've talked about was designed to make it easier for people to switch to lower suppliers. Number of electricity transfers fell by 18% between the third quarter of 2012 and the third quarter of 2013. So your reforms haven't done very well, have they?
There was a drop in switching after the mis-selling allegations against some of the big six. But that's one of the key issues they're going to investigate. What is the right level of switching? How should switching be higher than it is? Why is it easier to switch your mobile phone provider? Why do people find that easier than switching your energy supplier? So that's a key part of the investigation. We want to see more people switching.
Is it not just convenient for you because it kicks the issue into the long grass in the run-up to the election?
This isn't long grass. They're being put on the pitch. They're being put under the floodlights. The big six are going to have to answer questions. They're going to be forensically investigated as to their policies. It's not going to take 2 years.
Allowing people like you to say, I can't comment on that until the investigation by the Competition Commission is over.
Well, it's not going to take 2 years. We've time limited it. It can't be longer than 18 months. We'll get the answer long before 2 years. But it's important this is taken out of party politics, actually. People make claims, and Labour have been all over the place on whether it's right to have vertical integration or whether the profits are too large. Let's have it properly investigated out of party politics, and we'll get the answers we need.
Does Labour welcome this?
Yes, but crucially, the point that Richard Lloyd was making is that that doesn't mean that nothing should happen whilst this is going on. And we've set out a package of reform proposals which we are consulting on currently, and if we're elected in 2015, we'll take those forward. And the competition...
Let me just go through that, because I think this is very interesting. Just you, even with this, if you win next May, the Competition Commission investigation will be ongoing, but you will proceed with your price freeze in the middle of this investigation.
We will proceed with the price freeze, and we will proceed with the reforms that we've set out that we think need to happen.
That's interesting, because I can see why you might want to proceed with the price freeze. I can understand that. But why would you proceed with quite substantial market reforms until you've read the investigation, conclusions and work of the Competition Commission?
Because there is an issue. There are two issues here. One is about transparency in the market, and one is about the competitive or anti-competitive behaviour. Now, obviously, the Commission will do their work, and if we're in that position in government, we'll obviously reflect on what they come out with at the end of it. But the other issues, which we've identified in our Green Paper, which we're consulting on, are around bringing transparency to this market, which is woefully lacking. And actually, SSE's decision yesterday in relation to their generation and supply business indicate exactly that the issues around trust are not just about whether it's competitive or not. It's also about transparency in that market.
You won't know for sure if the market's anti-competitive. You won't know for sure if there is tacit price fixing going on. You won't know for sure if there's something going wrong between the wholesale and the retail markets until you've read the full investigation, because at the moment you don't know.
But we know for sure now that the market is not transparent. We know for sure now that there is an element of self-supply between the companies that generate and retail the power. We know for sure now that there's been issues around liquidity which are not solved just by the things that have happened so far, but need to go much further. And we know now that we're in a situation where the small companies, I think last time I was on with you, Andrew, with Stephen Fitzpatrick of OVA, was making the point very clearly about the transparency in the market, which is key for the smaller suppliers that Michael talks about.
Well, this is prejudging, the investigation, which should be done not by politicians, but by independent academic experts. And you can't say two things simultaneously. You can't say profits and prices are too high and then say there's a lack of transparency. You don't really know what profits and prices are. You can't say two things at once.
Just don't misrepresent me, Michael. The issues around transparency are around there is not transparency around the way in which the trading functions. There's not transparency around the price which people are paying as it's coming into and out of the market.
Tom,
transparency is needed to brought to this market to get trust back into. People don't have trust in their suppliers. They don't have trust in the energy industry as a whole, and that transparency is important for that.
We have major capacity shortages looming, and the government said it's looking for £100 billion of fresh investment between, I think, about 2015 and the end of the decade to create new capacity. Now, the big six were already not investing very much before you announced this. are you assuming that they won't invest anything now until this investigation is over?
No, they've known of this possibility for some months. They are continuing to invest.
Well, the SSE's just pulled out of 20 billion on the wind
Just hang on a
farm.
moment. Centrica pulled out of the nuclear station at Hinkley. Then EDF came in to replace them. We've had billions of pounds being invested in renewables. We have plenty of interest in our electricity market reform to replace the capacity that is aging and needs to be replaced. This isn't going to delay investment.
If that's the case, why every year have you added less new capacity than capacity you've closed or mothballed?
Well, we are adding new capacity.
But it's less than you're closing.
Well, it takes time to build a nuclear power station to get terms agreed. We've done that now, the first nuclear power station for 25 years. We had the 2 biggest wind farms in the world opened last year. There are 4 more wind farms under construction offshore. There is a wave of other investment in renewables, and there is plenty of interest, I can tell you, in our contracts for difference, which will be advertised in the autumn, and in the capacity market, which is our reserve supply for 4 years' time.
You accept at the moment you're not replacing capacity as quickly as you're closing old capacity?
Well, we need to go faster, certainly. There is old capacity being taken off the system because the previous government failed to invest, signed up to various commitments without being sure there would be new plant to replace it. So we are running to catch up with a legacy of underinvestment.
Let me just welcome our viewers from Scotland. We're talking about electricity and gas prices. That is a UK-wide matter of concern to everybody. How much spare capacity will we have next winter?
Well, we'll have sufficient capacity next winter.
How much?
It actually gets tighter. I can't give you the exact figure, but it gets tighter, in fact, in the winter of 15-16 and 16-17. But that's only if nothing is done. We've already asked the grid and Ofgem to look at better balancing measures, to consider bringing some mothballed plant back into service.
And
there's only going to be a crisis if nothing is being done.
That's just been rejected as well. One of the major energy companies, you were trying to get them to bring a gas plant back on. It says it won't do it.
Well, that'll depend. Company by company.
Correct.
There are many mothballed gas plants.
Yeah. And the major one that you wanted, 750 megawatts, the one at Keadby, SSE said it will not be available.
There are some that will be available and some that are being withdrawn. That is Ofgem's job to make sure that there is sufficient capacity. We will only have a shortage of capacity if nothing is done. We are doing things.
What can you do between now and 2016?
Well, you can bring mothballed units back on.
But I've just said the main one that you wanted is not coming back on.
There are a whole series of mothballed stations and units within mothballed stations
Is
that they're looking at now. It's not just one station.
Is it true that you've got all sorts of diesel generator parks all over the country ready to click in?
No, come on.
Have you?
No, we don't need. No, we don't need diesel generator parks.
But you do have diesel generators.
There are mothballed units of existing stations that can be brought on.
No, excuse me,
and
Minister,
I want to assure you.
Are you telling our viewers that you have that diesel generation is not part of any backup plan?
Well, I don't know the number of diesel generator units or parks that there happen to be.
There are over 300, and it would be hard to think of anything more CO2 generating than diesel generators, and that's part of your backup plan.
Well, I'll go and look at diesel generators for you. But what I do want to reassure you is that there is sufficient capacity that can be brought back onto the system, and Ofgem and National Grid have been charged with that, making sure that that margin of excess capacity doesn't tighten in the winters of 16 and 17.
And if there is a need for big investment, and there will still be, whatever is said, that the big six will have to contribute, if Labour continues with its price freeze and by reforming the market even before you've seen the competition report, there is no chance of a single pound of fresh investment from the big six under Labour until that happens.
Well, look at what SSE said yesterday as just one example. Now, they are instituting part of the reform package that we're talking about, making sure happens across the market to bring transparency in it. They're still investing,
back from investment.
But they're still investing significant amounts
how much?
as well. Well, I think it works out. I think it was £1.5 million a day or something. The figure that they used in their report yesterday.
1.5 billion a year.
So
which
it's a significant amount.
Substantially from.
But the investments that they pulled out from, the ones they detailed yesterday, they're not happening. Other people are coming into those, and there's a difference here between some of the big six in terms of the levels of investment they've put in, particularly in low carbon plant, and some of the others, some of the Norwegians and other players who've come into that market. So there's the investment won't all come from the big six, but I think it still will come. But it'll only come if we've got a real sense of a long-term framework for policy for the future, and that's what we need at the end of this process.
So much more to ask, but we need to move on.
Yesterday, there were